Hello. Back in October, I was asked to give a talk about my work in building suits of armor, forging swords, casting coins, and teaching sixth grade social studies. And as the people who came through looked at all of the various artifacts I had built, I sought to prove in the second half with a talk that what I'm doing is more than an eccentric hobby, that there is a deeper meaning to this work. It's not simply making shiny things as a weird hobby. Um, and in talking about this, I really was discussing a larger question. And that question is, why should the past matter? Why, in this age of unprecedented technology and growth and progress, why should the relics of the past hold any meaning for us? And the answer to that, and the answer to why does history matter in general, or humanities for that matter, is that it is the story of humanity. It is our story. It is who we are as humans. And to understand that question is to understand ourselves. Marcus Aurelius, the last of the five good Roman emperors, wrote, "That which comes after ever conforms to that which has gone before." And there's a lot of power in this statement and a lot of truth. Um, for us as Americans who see continuity in the Western tradition, this is deeply powerful. We built ourselves on the Greco-Roman model actively, and we formed ourselves consciously on that which had gone before. And when you think about it, people are people. We respond to the same emotions and stimuli. We think many of the same thoughts. Heck, we even speak a lot of the same words. And to understand the mistakes and the successes of the past is to avoid them ourselves. We don't have to hit those same blunders that the ancients did if we understand them. We have the power to make ourselves the best, the brightest, the strongest, and the most just of any humans who have ever lived if we understand who we are and where we've come from. So when talking about ancient history and why it matters, there were really three parts to the conversation. The first was, why does classical history matter? The second was, why does how we teach classical history matter? And the third was, why does hands-on exploration of classical history matter? And we'll tackle these in succession. So the first question, why does classical history matter? Let's begin by defining what do we mean by classical history. This means the history of the Greeks and the Romans, who they were, what did they think, how did they act, and really seeking to understand this ancient tradition, this birth of who we feel that we are as an American society, as a Western society. And when I say Western, I don't mean ethnically, I don't mean racially, I don't mean biologically, I simply mean the traditions, the values, and the beliefs that were forged in this ancient world that continue on through to the modern day. Beliefs like citizenship, voting rights, that science can hold the answers, things of that sort. We'll break that down a little further. I just wanted to simply state that this is a belief system, not anything more than that. So, the societies of the Greeks and the Romans. I think it may be best to frame this with a Roman proverb. We'll let them speak for themselves here. The Romans said, "Ex oriente lux, ex occidente lex." From the east, light, from the west, law. We'll take this, again, one at a time. So starting with that first part, from the east, light. So the birth of the spark of Western identity, the values that we believe in, came in ancient Greece. It was born in the inferno of the collapsing Mycenaean Bronze Age. The first great power born in Greece collapsed in chaos and destruction and turmoil, and there was a period called the Greek Dark Ages. And in this collapse, where 70% of the population died out and 90% of settlements were destroyed, in this period of apocalyptic struggle, the birth of Western civilization came. It was annealed in the ashes of the Dark Age and tempered by the necessities of the Archaic period. This is the birth of values like citizenship, individual rights, and self-governance. And in Greece, we see a unique rejection of theocratic monarchy. If you were to take a random sampling of any civilization at any point in human history, odds are you're going to find a king who has the backing of his god. That is why he is king. If you look at Hammurabi, who said that Marduk made me king. I am king because this divine being has appointed me king, and if you cross me, Marduk will crush you. For the Greeks, that wasn't enough. If you think like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, that part where the constitutional peasant says, strange women lying in ponds is no basis, or distributing swords is no basis for a system of government. Supreme power derives from a mandate from the masses, not some aquatic farce. That's similar to what the Greeks said. Okay, you can't just be king because you say you're king because some god appointed you. We have a say too. We want to vote. And this is a unique innovation. I mean, this is something that's so basic to us today, but that is not the majority of the human experience. This is a very strange and new way to think of the world, and this comes from ancient Greece. It's pretty exciting stuff. So the Greeks insisted that their citizens should have a say in government. And where many civilizations embraced stability and peace, the Greeks threw that out. They said stability and peace can't be our ultimate objective. They eschewed safety and embraced unstable change to facilitate autonomy. They said that self-governance was the most important thing, that the polis, the community, was the supreme center of government, and that to be a free citizen in a polis, a self-governing community, was the greatest thing, that everything else could be sacrificed to ensure the polis's safety, that the polis remained free. I mean, if you look at the American ideology, this is something that we certainly believe in, that American freedom, that fighting off the British and our self-governance. I mean, that's kind of the core of who we are as Americans, and that's a very Greek thing we're saying. So in ancient Greece, we see a fascinating arrogance. The Greeks believed in the boundless potential of man, that humans could do anything. Well, assuming they didn't get too arrogant, and assuming that the angry gods didn't smack them down for crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. But you see heroes fighting monsters, human heroes, and you see humans achieving so much. The Greek mythology is about the doings of people or gods who act like people. It's a very fascinating worldview. The Greeks began writing down their stories in their plays, not simply their court decrees. Unlike in Mesopotamia, where you have sort of court goings-on, the Greeks are writing down their beliefs, their random musings. They're writing on pots that I made this pot, and I made this pot better than that guy down the street who could never make this pot as good as I can. We're seeing in these writings the Greeks begin to subject their world to the scrutiny of logic. They believed that this puny human mind can somehow unlock the most complicated mysteries of the world. And that belief in rational thought is extraordinarily important. That is the foundation of science, that the scientific method, that by asking questions and seeking answers, we can somehow unlock the universe's mysteries. That's a direct line of thought back to ancient Greece. And the Greeks applied this logical examination to all that they encountered. And this is the birth of most of our academic disciplines. I mean, heck, if you look at the names, biology, geology, philosophy, psychology, history, economics, these are all Greek words that stem from Greek thought. And this is a fairly unique thing. We don't see this cropping up everywhere. And if you ever doubt the fact that the Greeks were the foundation of all of this scientific inquiry, never forget that we conquered the moon in the name of the sun. With the Apollo landings, the Greek god of the sun, Apollo, we planted a flag on the moon. So in essence, in the modern world, we conquered the moon in the Greek god of the sun's name. which is kind of an exciting and interesting way to think about it. But the Greeks didn't flinch from what they found with this inquiry. It wasn't all good, it wasn't all happy, it wasn't all nice. There were dark corners of the human soul that were exposed to brutal inquiry and honest evaluation. We have unfettered records of some of the worst acts that humans have ever achieved, along with some of the greatest things they've ever done, and they stare us directly in the face in these Greek narratives. If you look at, say, the plays of Euripides, Trojan Women, where the queen Hecuba of the Trojans is tearing out her hair and speaking of the grief of being a conquered people who had to be subjected to a Greek sacking, we see a truly soul-rending exploration of grief and loss. And it's worth pointing out that recently Syrian refugees have used this play, Trojan Women, to express their experience as refugees. They have put on their own version of the play. And it's fascinating to see that they are using the words of the Greeks 2,000 years ago to express a very modern experience. Worth considering. In the Greek experience, we see how the Greeks strove to shape human nature with custom, with society. They realized that humans have the tendency and the capability to be both the greatest and the worst of creatures. They saw how humans could slaughter with more brutality than any other animal, but also care and nurture and build in a way that no other creature could. They struggled to shape humans to be the best and to avoid the worst parts of, well, who we are. We saw the rise of mechanisms that we still use today, how laws and customs can create the best and avoid the worst. We saw ultimately, though, that the Greeks destroyed themselves. In the Peloponnesian War, they destroyed everything it meant to be a free society. They created this war out of fear of what might happen, and it created a death spiral that stripped away all of the customs, all of the rules, and all of the systems that governed these Greek polities. It took away all of the buffers that prevented the instability from consuming their culture. And never again would the Greeks regain their autonomy. They would fall under the sway of empires, starting with the Macedonians, and then to the Romans, and then to the Byzantines, who really are just more Romans, and then to the Ottomans. Never again would the Greek city-state be supreme. And we see this when we study ancient history. This is the birth of the Western way of thinking, and it's important to know how it worked, why it took the shape that it did, and why ultimately the place of its birth fell and lost much of what it had held. And this might be a good place to stop this video, because we're going to transition now to the second part of the proverb, ex occidente lex.